Hey, if we could come together to start a common conversation, that'd be great. Hey, everybody. My name is Ben Doyle. I'm the chair of the Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience, and it is fantastic to see so many people here tonight. Some that I know as real champions for Montpelier, and some that I look forward to meeting. It's just really it's an honor to be here with you. And, I was just going to tell a brief anecdote. I don't know if folks remember this, but maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, there was a downtown and historic preservation conference in Montpelier with the Creative Community Exchange. It was this big event in Montpelier, and there were like 500 or 600 people from around New England that came to Montpelier to talk about community vibrancy. And they picked Montpelier intentionally because of what an incredible town it is and of all the interesting and exciting things that were happening as an example of what a vibrant downtown could look like. And I remember sitting in a session in a room where there was a municipal leader talking about community engagement, and she said, when you're doing anything good for your community, or really anything good in life, you manifest your intent through your presence. And I'm not this person, but I wrote that down, and I put it on my computer screen, and I look at it sometimes that we manifest our intent through our presence. And that just means that we do good things by showing up. And you folks have showed up tonight, and the entire town of Montpelier, we've showed up for each other, and that work continues, and there's a lot of work to do, but we're so glad that you're here tonight to think with us about that work. So I'm here to just briefly introduce and remind you all, like, what is the Commission on Recovery and Resilience, and what are we doing? You'll remember that there was a series of forums after the flood where the community came together. 1,000 people participated in this to identify priorities that they wanted to see for recovery and resilience. And then coming out of that, this commission was formed. It was a partnership between the City of Montpelier, the Montpelier Foundation, and Montpelier Alive. And those three partners convened this commission. People applied to be on it and were appointed. And, the thing that's really wild about this, and frankly is my favorite thing, this commission has no real authority, right? The only authority we really have is the will of the people that we're trying to help move their ideas forward. Right? We're a partner to city government, but we're not a part of city government. We're not an independent, nonprofit organization. We're an initiative that is taking all the ideas from the community and trying to be a vehicle to help move them forward. We're a connector, a convener, an advocate, and we just really are trying to use our work and our experience and our connections to just really help good things happen in Montpelier. I just want to really quickly say, something that I actually said at the last forum, but it's still true. I think in community and economic development or in efforts like this, the towns that succeed have two things in common. One is that they have collaborative visionary leadership, and two, they have relentless optimism. And I know that we have both, and that you're here tonight because you have that too. And I'm just really excited to be here with you. So where we are right now in this stage is, we've been working for months and months and months, and we had a public forum 3 months ago where we shared with you some really broad, high-level goals, right, and kind of values of this commission and the way in which we're going to approach this work. And we've basically taken all the ideas from the forums and the priorities and put them into 3 buckets. Watershed management, right, because what's happening in Montpelier with flooding, it doesn't just happen here. It's a watershed issue, and we need to be talking and thinking on a watershed issue level. The second one is an adaptive downtown. How do we take this incredible historic built environment that we love, and how do we make it more resilient for the next flood that we know is going to happen? What are the changes we can make to make that work? And then the third is emergency response, right? That is obviously like the city does a job of continuance of operations of municipal services, but there's a whole other part that needs help, and that's thinking about how are we helping our neighbors, right? How do we immediately jump in to help them when they need help? How do we immediately jump in to help businesses when they need help? What does that comprehensive plan look like to make sure that everybody's getting the help that they need? And so those are the 3 buckets, and then we took that from the last kind of community forum where we got feedback on all of that. And the commission continued to work to distill them more into actionable projects. It's great to have a theoretical idea of like, we need to solve the watershed issue, but what does that actually look like on a practical day-to-day level? And that's where we're at right now, is moving those kinds of projects forward. And so tonight, we're going to share with you more detail on that and then ask for your feedback on it. But the most important thing I have to do tonight is to introduce the new executive director of the Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience. This was a big deal. We got over 60 applicants for this job. We got people from outside the country applying to this job, from outside the state applying to this job. We interviewed a ton of people, and I am just absolutely thrilled with the person that we've selected. If you know John Copans, he's been in this community for decades. He has experience at the state level, the federal level, deep experience with community engagement. And, you know, most importantly, he has a great moral center and he loves this town. And we're so excited at the commission, you know, the commission members to be partner with John and to help him be successful so that we can all be successful together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ben. That is extremely generous of you. So I'm John Copans. I've lived in town. I live up on Cliff Street with my family. In fact, my family is upstairs providing some childcare right now if anybody needs it. But we've got a lot of work to do tonight, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time introducing myself. I will just say it just feels like a tremendous privilege to get to do this work, this critical work in my home community. I really, and that work is nothing without the community, without all of you, without all of us pulling together. So that's in large part what tonight is about, is sharing priorities that the commission has arrived at and really learning from you all, engaging with you all as we work to build action plans around those priorities. So what I'm going to do, in fact, is give you a quick overview of 5 of the priorities that we're not going to have deep conversations about tonight, but are ongoing things that you've heard about from us before to some degree, but that we are continuing to work on as a commission. And then we're going to pull up commissioners who are going to go into more depth about the main priorities tonight, just to give you a sense of where we are on our agenda. So let me start right in on the post office. Amazing work, folks, in terms of your advocacy with our congressional delegation and with the USPS. We know we're making progress on that front. They are working to open up that location on City Center at this point. So that is progress. But you know what? We're leaving it on the list because our sense is maybe that work isn't done. We all know that Montpelier should have a full service post office in downtown. That's not a question. Who knows what happens in the next year or two with the federal building? We feel like we've got to keep that one on the list to bird dog that. So that's USPS. We as a team need to be on that one. All right, next. 5 Home Farm Way. Folks know that probably is the space behind Agway. What's in process right now is to actually transfer ownership of that parcel to the city and to remove that old structure from the property. What comes next after that is really trying to be very strategic in terms of what we deploy on the land there to maximize sort of the water carrying capacity of that parcel, essentially. What strategies can you deploy to allow the water to spread on that parcel before it flows into Montpelier? It's actually an example of what we need to do throughout the watershed, but here's an example where it is in process to make that happen. There's work to be done with engineers to really do the analysis. For the commission, we are going to continue to sort of work with the various partners to push that forward. That's that. Next, we all remember the work that happened at the hub here in Montpelier, right? So many people came there, and what the hub was in a lot of ways was an exchange. People came because they had something to offer to their neighbors, and people came because they needed something. And the hub was that short-term solution to make that connection between needs and things to offer. Guess what? The needs don't just disappear after 2 or 3 weeks, right? What we know is there are still people in our community suffering from impacts of the flood. And what we have, and I shouldn't say we have an incredible leader in Suzanne here. I'm going to point to Suzanne Laguerre Belcher, who has stepped forward to lead this organization called the Montpelier Disaster Recovery Network, to provide that ongoing facilitation of really supporting those who are suffering from long-term impacts of the flood, and to really bring to life those offers in the community. So actually tonight we are going to have a station for Suzanne. Suzanne's going to be right over here. My plea to you all is, here's what Suzanne needs. Suzanne needs sort of 2 layers of work. Suzanne is actually, they are still building a leadership team to run that effort. So they need some sort of board members around communications, around development, around organization as they get going with their work. But they also need doers, people who maybe it's as simple as like holding a hammer, going to someone's house, doing that kind of work, or it's doing outreach in the community to make sure we're finding those folks who still need support. So my plea to you all is, please, if you've got something to offer, or honestly, if you need something, please connect with Suzanne as part of tonight's program. All right, the next one is, one thing that we have heard, or that the commission has heard, is sort of what is the playbook to refer to when we're in the midst of an emergency or disaster. And the sense is, both at the sort of residential level and at the business level, we really need to build a toolkit so that people know, what do they do, who do they call, how do they respond when they're at that moment of crisis. So this is, again, a partnership. It might be, in fact, that we're working with the city. It might be that we're working with Montpelier Alive and their connection to businesses, or the community and economic development folks with Central Vermont. But the sense is we need to build those toolkits. So that is another project of the commission. And then finally, the final one I'm going to mention tonight is around really community education and learning. If what we know is we need to act, we need to do some big things as a community, and acting means having some common understanding of what the challenges we face are. So that could take many different shapes. Maybe it's about having some walking tours around town where we look at the rivers and we understand better from a hydrologist or a river engineer, just, where is that water coming from and what strategies can we deploy? Maybe it's a workshop. Maybe it's working with our schools. Education is going to take a bunch of different forms. In fact, we've got a little board over there for folks to add your ideas in terms of what kind of education you feel like we need as a community. But we know that's work that the commission needs to do as well. So that brings me to the end of my list of priorities. Now what I get to do is I'm actually going to hand it off to the first commissioner, who will then hand it off to the next commissioner. But we've got different commissioners coming up to talk through with you our sort of 5 key priorities tonight. And then I will come back up and explain how the rest of the evening is going to go. So with that, river improvements, and that is Stephanie Smith speaking about that. Thanks, Stephanie.
Don't want to mess with this. I'll stay on my toes. Hi, everyone. Stephanie. I will be over here talking about the River Initiative, which is a statewide scoping assessment to work with regional planning commissions for outreach to our communities and engineering firms to develop projects that can have some incredibly meaningful impacts on lowering flood elevations in our downtowns. So we're working with the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. We're very lucky to have Keith and Christian here, who will be with me over here, working on the initial phases of this to gather input from the community, see what types of projects are out there, things like Five Home Farm Way, where we can lower flood elevations, reduce risk broadly within the community. And we're very excited to have SLR as our engineering firm. The lead is a local resident, Roy Schiff, who is brilliant, lives in Montpelier, and very excited to get underway with that project. So if you want to hear more, we'll be over here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Gwynn. I'm on the working group that is working towards building a comprehensive community action plan. A lot of what we heard after the flood immediately was that people didn't know who to turn to or what was happening. What we've learned, the more work we've done, is that the city has an excellent plan for their continuing operations and for keeping all of those things going. But there are other things out in the community that are simply not the city's job. They're our job. They're your job. But whoever you ask, it always that guy's job that didn't get done. So one of the things that we've identified as a real need is to have a well-documented plan that is set out ahead of time, that is rehearsed and is kept alive even in times of blue skies, so that the community as a whole is ready when the next event is inevitably going to happen. To that end, we've hired a consultant team that is led by Erica Borneman, who was help me out, Ricardo, what was her title before? The Director of Vermont Emergency Management. And we interviewed multiple consultants and decided that her team had the best approach for our community specifically. They are based in Vermont, and she was here mucking out basements in the immediate aftermath. So that work is beginning now. We are beginning with stakeholder engagement. Will be the first step, talking to members of the city to find out what they feel went well, what they feel could have gone better, talking with Alec Ellsworth and the folks at the volunteer hub, as well as business owners, individual residents, to find out from everyone what went well, what could have gone better, and develop a cohesive plan that everyone can buy into before it's really necessary. And we'll be right over here in that dark corner by the exit sign when the time comes.
The dark corners will once again be in the light soon, I promise. Hello, everybody. My name is James Ray. The next priority that we're going to be having a corner to talk about with you in more depth is engaging and celebrating and encouraging regional conversations. The phrase "we are in this together" has never been more true than when you are speaking about the people and the communities who share a watershed. We share the peril, and we will share the success going forward with what we can address in that watershed to ensure that future events impact us as little as possible. And that means that the communities and the hard work that's happening in Montpelier, that's happening in Cabot, that's happening in Middlesex and Waterbury, and every other community throughout the entire Winooski watershed, I think you've all experienced in your own lives and your own work, well-meaning people doing their task. You focus on the task in front of you with all the best intentions. If we as a watershed do that to a fault, we're not doing our jobs. We're going to need to make sure that every so often, all of the parties doing their hard work in their own corners look up, look at each other, sit down at the table, check in with each other. What are you doing? What are we doing? Are we at cross purposes? Are we bolstering the entire watershed's ability to slow down water, to capture water, to withstand these events more thoroughly going forward? And to that extent, the commission is going to do its share. I am not going to stand here and pretend to you or claim that this commission is a leader in those conversations. The document in front of you and the document at our station lists many of the organizations that are going to be important pieces of those conversations. So it's not to say we're not, so prideful as to say we're the leader of those conversations. What we are to say is that the commission, the Montpelier Commission, is an active and very energetic and eager participant in those conversations. And we're going to do our part to make sure that those conversations happen and the cooperation happens so that improvements across the watershed are knitted together in a way that can benefit all communities as thoroughly as possible. I am excited to say that a key partner in those conversations, Pat Moulton with the State Recovery Office, is here and will be a key person with the discussion around this priority in our station during the next hour. Thank you very much. Peter Walk is next.
As Jamie mentioned, I'm Peter Walk. Honestly, it's a joy to be here with you all tonight. The work of this commission has been incredibly powerful. As I say to my fellow commissioners, there's very rarely where you have a 3-hour meeting every other week and you leave more excited than when you arrived. This group has done incredible work. We are incredibly excited to bring these ideas that we've developed for your feedback. One of the things that we would think of, we benefit in this city from having a wealth of existing work. We've done city master plans. We've looked at our downtown core. We've looked at the state capitol complex. What we haven't done is center the river in that study, to do a river's edge master plan, to think about within the city limits, what can we do? What can we think about the way we interact with the river, the relationship that we have with the river, both as cities and as residents, as part of the community, to be able to make sure that we're not afraid of our rivers, that we're embracing them and figuring out ways in which we coexist in order to have the best community we possibly can. So really excited about that conversation moving forward. Please join us in the back right corner if you'd like to talk about the River's Edge Master Plan.
My name is Nathan Suter. I'm on the commission. I am a neighbor, I think, of most of yours. I live here in Montpelier. Thank you very much for coming tonight. One thing I'm not a building scientist. And my guess is that most of us are not building scientists. So what does that mean? If you care about energy efficiency and you want to do a better job of conserving energy, you call Efficiency Vermont or you call an energy auditor and they come and they figure out how much air does your building lose? How good is your insulation? Things like that, right? You depend upon a professional to figure that out. And then they give you a list that says, do this first, then do that, and then do that. So I make that analogy because anybody who has a building, home, a commercial building in the downtown, they're probably not building scientists either. So one of the things we've been thinking about is, okay, what tools can we as a commission facilitate or catalyze into being that helps everybody in the downtown or every building owner in the downtown? Or if you're a business owner who occupies a building that is owned by somebody else, how can you be sure that the next time our city floods, because it will, you can recover more quickly the building you're in, you can reoccupy. If it's housing, you can reoccupy that. The heat will be on in November if you need it to be on. So our solution or our proposed solution is a downtown building survey, where our goal is to create a project where we hire a consultant or hire engineers to survey and assess every single building in the flood zone in our downtown, so that every building owner has that list. What are the first things that I can do? What's the next thing that I can do? And then they have the tools to engage with contractors or other specialists to get those projects done in the time that they can when they have the funds. So that's our vision for this project. Our idea is to find ways to fund that as much as possible, make it as accessible as possible to the building owners. And then everyone in the downtown is equipped with the right information. And as they make choices about their buildings, they're making them in a way that is building a more adaptive downtown. So I will be in the bright, shiny corner by the DVDs as you enter. If you want to talk with me about that idea, especially thinking about how do we convince our neighbors that this is a good idea and to engage in this process once we stand it up. So thank you all for coming. John, you're up. Okay.
Big thanks to those commissioners for running through those priorities. So actually, Mark, if you could bring up the map, I think that would be a helpful thing for us to see now. So the idea for the next hour is that we're having small group conversations around those priorities that you just heard about outlined by the commissioners. What you see is a little bit of a map just to give you a sense of where I am standing, where river improvements is, right? So that conversation is going to happen right here. Montpelier Action Plan for Local Emergency over there in that corner. Engage Regional Conversations and River Edge Masters Plan are both in that room. And then finally, the survey of downtown buildings in the corner, as Nathan mentioned. The last one I want to mention is the everything else conversation. Because I imagine there's maybe some priorities that you didn't hear us outline that you're concerned about. Or maybe you want to talk about one of those priorities that I talked about earlier on, or you've just got something else on your mind. That conversation is going to be happening in the side room right behind Ben over there. The idea here.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Couple things. One, the idea here is we're going to ring a bell every 15 minutes. That's just sort of a guide for you all that you may want to move on to a next conversation. It's just kind of a time marker. You're really free to roam around these conversations as you see fit. Go to what interests you. You can try to hit them all, or you could spend your entire hour on one topic if you so desire. But listen for that bell as maybe a prompt to move along. There it is. The other thing I want to mention is to remind folks that, yes, as Mark said, Suzanne is going to be here with the Montpelier Disaster Recovery Network. Please, if you've got something to offer or you need something, feel free to stop by that station. And also, there are a couple of easels there with Post-it notes along this hallway with two questions. What does a resilient Montpelier look like for you? And what do you see as educational priorities for us as we do the work around education here in the community? Finally, I want to mention one other person who's here who we should acknowledge, which is Mark mentioned that we've hired a consultant headed by Erica Borneman, but we also have Tori Littlefield here from that consulting group who's going to be part of that conversation tonight. So just wanted you to have a sense that we're getting started with some of this work, and it's great to integrate some of that into what we're doing tonight. So with that, I think we're ready to go. We'll turn on the lights and we'll get after it. Thanks so much.
at noon, between 11 and 1 or 2, we're gonna use all our library buildings within a year. We can't get people on the street
Foot traffic.
between 11 and 2. There were like 1,000 people poured out on the street.
Yeah.
And there were probably around 12 on the road. They quickly ate and then ran over to get a book for their niece.
Exactly.
Picked up something.
Went to the drugstore,
Went to the drugstore.
hardware store.
They were all over the place. And they ate lunch. Look at our town. The appropriate spot for that. And I think along the structural improvements, it's our most important concern. And maybe our most pressing concern if we're not going to get a lot of funds.
Yeah.
Because there won't be much to save.
Yeah.
If they're all gone, but we can't.
Yeah.
It's not going to be this little.
Yeah, let's.
No, I didn't have to remove it, but
Yeah, or feel free to tighten up too. Like, let's move, like, we could shift it over a little bit because it's quiet on this side. So,
no, I just, I wasn't sure that I understood what you're saying. Were you talking about the fact that people are not patronizing the stores? Is that?
There are no people in town.
Yeah, like restaurants and that sort of thing.
At noon, there used to be 1,000 people that are no longer here. And that has partially to do with the flood and partially to do with the loss of 2 colleges. Necky, so that's good. But all of these businesses were in response to that vibrant downtown foot traffic. Hi, Ann.
hello.
Excuse me.
Well, come right on through.
I've got all of that I can manage.
Good to see you.
Well, I hear you loud and clear, and you're not the first. I mean, it's
I know.
something we're
Where
here.
does it belong?
Well, you
Because
know,
it doesn't fit with something we have control over. But like, I was thinking, I went around for a while, I don't want to take too much of it, but I asked everyone I saw, what could we do to fix things? And somebody said, let me just say, somebody said, ask the governor to decree that there will be no more, that
Remote
the
work.
buildings are, no more remote work, just to save our town for the next year.
Well, how can the governor decree that?
well, for the governor, I mean, the dilemma for the state, as I understand it, is that they are actually in a posture of recruitment. They need more state employees. And that in fact, after the pandemic, it's become sort of an expectation amongst employees that they have the flexibility of working from home. And so in fact, if you don't offer that flexibility, you have a hard time. So that's okay.
I couldn't find you.
Yeah. Oh. Katie, actually, it's good. Katie, you're walking in at just the right moment here. Because, what's your name?
Nona Esther.
Is it, say it?
N-O-N-A.
No. Okay.
Esther.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Are you related to Hans by any chance? Or?
I am his mother.
I had such great meetings last week. Yeah. So,
He's great.
so, Katie, just to bring you up to speed, the concern being basically foot traffic, just like Katie and I were talking about. You know, just real concern about that fabric of local business in Montpelier.
My fear is that there'll be nothing to save.
When the next flood comes, because they will.
The businesses will all be functioning.
Yeah.
We're sort of in a position of one or the other, because people working from home, of course, they're doing something for instead of driving to their offices and whatnot. On the other hand, of course, it's not very good for the restaurant owners. Regarding that second thing, there's somebody who works here. She does volunteer work once a week, and she was trying to organize a group that would meet at one or maybe several different restaurants at a certain regularly, like every Wednesday.
That was me. I was doing,
Is
out of the senior center.
that was your strategy of just trying to.
Well, but there's
build
somebody
some.
else who was doing it also. But I think it's a great idea. She had a front book form suggesting this, and only 2 people responded saying, count me in.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we could form a little group to get,
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
What was the idea?
The idea is get people to every Tuesday or every Wednesday to meet somewhere.
Yeah, to go
and
together.
Spread out and go to dinner or go together to dinner,
A cash
out to
mob,
lunch. Yeah,
a cash mob. A legislator called me and said, I'm organizing a cash mob schedule. And so where are the businesses that really need this the most? Because I'll organize a group to make sure they know where to spend their money. And I thought that was a really good idea, yeah. Yeah,
Like
that's
a
what she called it.
like a dance mob, but a cash mob.
Yeah, you just show up and you're ready to buy food or whatever.
I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, I've also been thinking about this mostly because of what people have been writing about in French Forum about businesses. And after the flood, or soon after when we started the forums, the resilience.
Yeah.
I saw Blue Zone. I don't know if anyone else had seen that, but I brought it to the city hall, and said, "What is it?" It's called the Blue Zone, and it's a documentary. Okay. And it's about, there are countries where people tend to live over 100 years old, and so they talk about, what causes longevity in these particular countries. And I'm not gonna get into that, but the feature of the film for me was really the last segment, where it talks about incorporating different things in the town that brings people together. And they basic skill as humans.
Gathering.
Yeah, gathering. So they had things like a place for people to connect, right? We don't have, in many countries, European countries, and where people come, there's a place where people, I'm thinking that maybe
Like
the
a plaza, kind of.
yeah,
like
plaza,
that
where
kind of
people
like-
come, they know they can meet each other there, it's bringing people into town. And there are 4 premises for this particular, I don't know what you call it, but anyway, one of them is about physical activity. And also incorporating, we have a bike path, but there may be other things that we can have in town where people can come and just naturally take advantage of things that they can do.
Yeah,
To
30
stay
people come to
active.
take a walk on the bike path. 20 of them might go and buy something in town or get lunch.
Well, I'm looking at having it be part of the setting, of town setting, so that it's in town. It brings, the bike path's great, but it might bring some people into town. But I think if we have things in town, then, you might do some shopping with something you might not have considered buying or whatever when you're in town. You might
there are those times like when they close off that portion of State Street. Those creates a gathering.
Yeah, so you have social, interconnectedness by having that plaza that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And of course, it's much easier when you live in a country where it's warm year round, which we don't have here. But there are plenty of other possibilities that we already have available to us that are inside. I'm looking at outside things, from spring to fall. Where in this structure does this issue fit?
It's Katie and I were just meeting, right? Katie's the director of Montpelier Live. Katie's on the
So
commission.
that's, you're the
So-
one with the connection.
Yeah.
Businesses.
Yes, yeah, and we've talked about this a little bit. Does this lack of foot traffic downtown and what it poses, just the problem that it poses for our downtown, how does that relate to resilience and recovery? So we're working on some of those things, but this is our current situation as well. It's another challenged environment. It's another thing that really needs to be addressed now. That's where a lot of my attention does go. And I think you're kind of onto something with how it connects to resilience. Is like community gathering downtown, community supporting one another, including the business owners, including, if you have a healthy downtown and placemaking where plazas, where people can gather, then that is one aspect of creating a resilient community. And it's not just about spending money in the downtown businesses, it's also simultaneously about people gathering in the downtown. And that goes hand in hand. So that's how I see it connected to the work of the commission, and I feel like I have one of those connections. But yeah, there's a lot of work that is going on to that effect, but it's sad that it's an overarching kind of cultural change in trends. It's harder to get people to shop local, it's harder to get people to gather, as a community. The world and the nation are facing these challenges all at once now.
Everyone shops online now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone to look at, if you have Netflix, to look at Blue Zone and look at the last episode. It's one season only. There are 4 different, I don't know what episodes. And it's the last episode that you want to look at. That might fit with Montpelier. There might be some ideas in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great.
And the other idea that was floated, that you might not have heard of, was getting into, you were said called it a cash model. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
an
great
important one too. So
I too, at the winter, and there was a lot of ice on the road. I had a program that was called Walk for Exercise, which in front of.
I would see you with a group, yeah, now that you say that, yeah. And I saw your front porch forum post.
And a lot of people have asked me if I'm going to do it again, so I think probably tomorrow I'll put something in again on front porch forum. We usually meet 1 o'clock every Sunday. And whether we stay on a flat area or inclined hills, it's dependent on the people, what they want us to do.
is this on Montpelier Front Porch Forum, or does it go out to the?
As far as I know, it's only on Montpelier.
Yeah, I'm East Montpelier.
Well, at any rate, unless it starts raining or pouring this weekend, I'll do it again this weekend. We'd meet at 1 o'clock in front of the town hall. And then we go around for about an hour. As I said, whether we climb hills or just stay on foot terrain, it depends on the people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then do you stop? Like, one thing you could do is, as you finish, an optional thing would be like go to the coffee shop or go to the, is that part of it?
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I was going to say. We could combine them.
Yeah.
Give me an idea. There's a lot to help with. I think a lot of people want to help our downtown now because they're hearing these concerns on Front Porch Forum and from the business community and from the community that cares about that downtown. I wonder if it's worth like a location, like a web page at our site that could speak to that, how to support our downtown now, and then have these ideas listed, like the community can take these ideas into their own hands, where we can list events there that draw people to the downtown.
And how much staff do you have to do?
Well, we just hired 1 more full-time person, and then I have Carolyn Gradinsky, who's here, who's the part-time event coordinator. Yeah. So they're both people I work with and very motivated. Yeah.
That's great. I was thinking when you were saying, everyone said City Hall or.
Why don't you come in and join us?
No, I sit too much.
And I'm wondering, in front of City Hall, if that could be one place where people can contact.
Be a great place for a plaza.
Yeah, I know. So we talked about that a lot.
I didn't hear what you said.
A great place for a plaza or an activation for.
Right.
I think, it's created with that intention, but it doesn't meet that need very well and could be recreated. And our design committee at Montpelier Live is very interested in pursuing that. I think it's been, toyed with a bit over time, but I mean, hearing feedback from the community helps direct our work and vision. So
Yeah, the courtyard at the church is the other spot. Which church?
Where people do in fact.
That's been such a nice spot. over
And
the
I
years.
think one of the reasons is that there's actually space for more than two people to sit down. Where, you know, whereas is there, what is it about the city hall location that isn't very inviting? It's almost like you would have to sit alone on a rock bench.
It's kind of horizontal
It's not,
space.
it's not comfortable.
It doesn't allow for multiple
It doesn't,
dimensions.
no, it's just not set up right.
It's like also, you're not facing one.
I think they did it to keep people out.
But that's
It's
a great
working.
valid question
It's
is,
like-
what does it take to bring people together in this way we're imagining? You
Some
know,
of it's,
well, it could be improved upon, but also what isn't, what isn't in our downtown landscape that could be, or in that city hall plaza that could be.
90-degree angles for sitting. Look. Well, we have a little bit of that on those W's or whatever they were that were put out.
The M's, aren't they?
The
M's?
M's,
They're M's.
yeah, but I don't know if
Yeah.
the M, that doesn't do much somehow. I didn't find it very conducive. What were
They're not
those?
big.
I don't know. They were sitting blocks, because there's nothing.
Oh,
to
yeah,
back on,
okay.
But that are shaped like an M, but they're not really conducive to the conversation. I'm not sure why we tried to sit on them once, so two or three of us. And we couldn't quite get comfortable.
Yeah, there's some comfortable.
And that's true with City Hall, from City Hall. I mean, it's hard to sit on a rock, but. I mean, if you want to be there for a couple of hours, what makes for a comfortable
Spot.
spot?
So we do have a few new folks. I want to be sure other folks have a chance. Richard, do you want any context here, or?
I'm sorry I was late, I was just out back.
You happen to be,
Fundraiser.
you happen to be in the catch-all conversation. There's other stations, but this is kind of the popcorn, let's say, like whatever.
But it's all around one issue, which is how do we get people downtown again? Because we'll lose the businesses we have if we can't. And there are several factors that may empty our community. And we don't know how to do it. With two of
How we prepare for the next one.
Well, that's true, because they won't rebuild it yet.
And you're not gonna get new business if they know people left because of floods. So it's pretty big.
We can finish cleaning up from the last one.
Hi there, come on in.
The bike path from the bridge on over is still loaded with silt.
Are there other issues? I want to be sure other people have a chance to raise other issues they're thinking about, so. You just mentioned more cleanup. The bike path is an example of that.
There's silt over at the transit center, still piled up from last July.
Yeah.
And there's been no effort to get the collected debris out of the riverbank trees with plastic and styrofoam and everything in it. It's a constant reminder of not only the ill preparedness for the next flood, but that we can't even seem to get the depression of the last one cleared out, you know?
So more cleanup.
The senior center has something called trash traps. It's very effective. I remember it.
Yeah.
Maybe they would have an arm that could.
I think that would be complicated.
This feels more like a Department of Public Works or equipment
Because
kind
it
of a
needs
thing.
a ladder.
And or, yeah,
A bucket
loader.
Yeah. Long arm. I was talking to the prior director of Public Works today about it, who just joined the trash tramps.
Oh, good.
Trash tramps do graffiti and cigarette butts. They don't do,
No, that's
Major
the
flood.
grant team.
Well, and garbage in general.
Richard, did you have something to
I
add?
was gonna say, they are recruiting more volunteers and they could use some help.
The trash transfer?
If you, aspire to be a trash tramp, please join the crew.
There's an article recently about the trash tramp in, what was the name?
7 days had a great story about it.
It's very well done, very well.
WCAX.
Nice source of inspiration, I think, for other communities. Yeah. All right, we've had a couple other people join you. Do you have things on your mind?
Oh, no, I just joined. I'm just
Listening?
listening to these
All right.
ideas.
How about you?
Do I dare?
Oh, go for it.
Sorry.
I say too much a lot of times. It's been 10 months since the flood. I am still unhoused. I still have no resolution. I still sleep on a day bed in my daughter's house. Should it be that way? I feel that we need, when we have these kind of things happen, that we need a person assigned to each and every person who was damaged. And you work with that person. FEMA, you talk to 50 people. SBA, you talk to 50 people. Every time the spec changes, you have to tell your story. So I think a resilient community would be one that stepped up and helped the folks really with what they need to lead them to recovery. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's what I wanted to. I mean, we can talk about all these other things, you know, the watershed, yeah, good, but getting down to we have, in Montpelier, we have 10 or 12 substantially damaged folks. And what that means is your house has been more than 50% damaged, and you need to either elevate it, move it, or demolish it. That's it. Buyout takes 3 to 5 years. I'll be dead by the time we're running. Why does this 10 months with the SBA trying to get a bridge loan until I do the buyout? It's been a nightmare. For someone, I had to find out all the answers from inside my neighborhood. I had to find out all the answers for ourselves. And we're pretty expert. Yeah. And I think if we had people in the community that were experts, they could work with the newly traumatized, damaged folks. Long.
So it's kind of like a caseworker for each person.
Now,
but what I find is we've had caseworkers assigned to us, but we're light years ahead of them.
Is that right? Yeah, because I do know that within Capstone, right, there is a
they
team.
Haven't been trained. I mean, they're trained.
They're sort of getting trained. Yeah.
They don't have the experience.
Okay.
You know, so it's like, really? Sorry, but
There was a comprehensive article about this in the Bridge right after the flood. And I believe that when the home is substantially damaged and the options that you have will not leave you financially.
no.
You will be in great.
I can tell you, if you have insurance, which everyone's required, if you have a mortgage, everyone's required to have insurance. Insurance pays, the way I see it, 1/3 of what you really need. They only pay for what got wet. So 2 feet, only 2 feet got wet, that's all they pay for. Okay? They don't pay for the other part that you have to rip out because the water soaked up in, or the water came in. They don't pay for that. So, for instance, let's just say most people got around $90,000 if they had flood insurance. The total cost to repair back to what it was is running $322,000. Where does that come from if you're just a regular working bloke, retired, and yeah, no good answer. So,
you know, this does not address your immediate need, but I think part of the goal in establishing the Montpelier Disaster Recovery Network is to build that infrastructure and that expertise such that when the next one comes, we're more prepared.
There's a lot of smart, educated people in the Montpelier. Come on.
Wicked.
Yeah. We could pull it together.
Yeah, and I think the goal is for that to be the place where that work happens. But I have to acknowledge that they're building it right now, just like you say, so you're ahead of them because you've been doing so much of that.
So, yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up through thinking about the future. How do we structure it so people are taken care of? They're not.
And I'm sure you've talked with Suzanne.
Yes, I've been working with Suzanne. And I've also joined the grant writing committee of the city.
Oh, the city put together, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So hopefully we can find some grants that give that kind of money to facilitate those kind of activities.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Another factor is, of course, is how much time we have, to implement all these activities. And of course, it's a way. It seems to me in this community, it seems to take so long sometimes, regardless of how important they are. So I'm not optimistic personally.
I honestly, it's our job as a commission to try to retain and grow the sense of optimism. I get it, right? You see plans come and go, and you see things take a while. I think it's really, I mean, you heard Ben Doyle say it, like, it's one of our challenges as a commission is to try to account for that and to rebuild that sense of what's possible in this place without overpromising and being hard, because it's hard work. The reality is it's hard work. It's not something that happens with a snap. But like we've got to have a sense that we can get things done as a community.
And as a property owner, I'm concerned about taxes. I mean, but we don't talk about money when we're talking about all these things. So, I mean, it all sounds good and I'd like to have it, but there's just so much that people can pay and to afford a home, otherwise they leave. It's expensive already.
I see some new people who've joined us. I want to be sure, especially with the bell ringing, it might be a good moment to pause if anyone wants to move on to another conversation. Really appreciate the feedback and just invite, I'm not encouraging you to leave, but just want to give people an opportunity to do that and then invite other people into the conversation as well. So. Hi there, welcome. Hello, welcome. So this is really just a free-for-all, honestly.
Yeah,
like,
you see everything.
It is. We do have those other issues that I talked about earlier, but it's really open forum.
Okay, so I'm just stopping in to see what the gist of things are. I'm just thinking about it. I've just seen a lot of it, and I hear where you're coming from. I've seen a lot of pessimism. The bridge was very pessimistic. I read, what was it, last week, about how the businesses are really struggling. I've been talking to some people, and they are really struggling. And then you have people coming into Montpelier, and the rents are ridiculously high. There is no moratorium on that. I cannot believe because I lived here in KP, like I cannot believe what people are paying to live here these days. So when you look at that, when you look at how much, people are dealing with taxes, with their, the businesses, with their overheads, the tenants, dealing with recovery and dealing with how just different issues about how we're not connected enough as a community, which I really appreciate the community meeting out there, because I think that's part of all of this is how there's a disaster, but I know I was on Elm Street, I live on Elm Street, and I was isolated. I did not hear from anybody, I was just in panic, it was horrible, and you know, so I think if we can move forward just in that sense, the other pieces perhaps could come together more, you know, because when a community, the whole world is in danger with all of these factors right now. You know, the whole world, you know, our environment is in a terrible place. You know, the economy is in a terrible place. And we're looking at, you know, we're at risk of a dictatorship in America. And I just lay it on the line that way, right? So what would this mean to all of us in the way of our resilience? If we're not strong as a community, what are we? Right.
Yeah, and I think what I would say is part of our work is really figuring out what's within our control as a community. Like there are a variety of things that are outside of our control. What are the resources that we control here, and what's the work that we can be doing collectively?
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I hate to be optimistic. We actually have had an effective way to bring people in the community together around disasters. And that was the capital area networks, which I'm sure has been mentioned in some of these other groups. It's been mentioned in almost every meeting I've gone to for the past year and a half.
Sure. Yep.
And I was involved very centrally with that. And it was done away with by the city manager. And I think, speaking of taxes, it costs almost nothing to do because it's done by and with volunteers. It had some structural problems. The main one being that most of the communities were too big. So I was the community CAN coordinator in College Hill. I had 132 families. Now, when I moved across to Mountain View, I had 31 families. And with 31 families, I kept those people.
That's a scale that makes sense.
I kept those people abreast of everything that was going on. I got people to go to city council meetings. I got people to go to DRB meetings. I got people knew me. People knew from me before they knew from the emergencies that there was a water main break, right? And people felt supported. And this was a very heterogeneous group. There were renters up there. There are people who are seniors that are homebound. And so that it does, even though it's only 31 people, 31 families, when you multiply that times, we should have had probably 50 CAN neighborhoods instead of 20.
Okay.
So that we could really manage the whole thing. Yeah. I would strongly recommend reviving that. I submitted a blueprint for doing it for virtually nothing. All we needed was money for Zoom. Because that's the other way. Zoom was fantastic. We got people in District 3 to go to a Zoom candidates forum. We got people then, once the candidates were elected, we had 2 new people. We had office hours on Zoom with them. Okay, all of this made people in District 3 feel a lot more represented by their city council.
Yeah. Do other people have experience with the capital area network? I'm just curious if others. Yeah, I see Andrea.
Yeah, I was in the group. A lot of people don't remember that it actually was initiated at the time when another emergency was anticipated. It hadn't happened, but it was anticipated, which is in 2008, 7-8. There was the expectation that there was going to be a huge spike in the cost of fuel oil, and that lots and lots of people were not going to be able to afford to heat their homes. And that was when it was initiated, was to create a network of people who could identify who in their neighborhood was at risk of not being able to heat their home that winter. Now, as things turned out, that did not happen.
But the financial
well, then there was that came later, but that particular anticipated emergency didn't occur. And so the structure was created with that in mind. And then some of the neighborhoods continued more in a social context and started doing potlucks and other kinds of things. But I think the
But that's a stable Montpelier took over management of it and tried to revive the mutual aid part of it,
right,
not the block party part of it.
Right, but I think your point is well taken, that to make it manageable, particularly in the case of an emergency, I think smaller groupings, 2 streets, 2 cross streets or something like that, is probably as much as could be reasonably coordinated for anything, whether you're talking about, civic engagement, or you're talking about emergency response, or even just monitoring what's going on with people and how are people doing. So I hope discussion will continue about finding a way to recreate that idea or re-energize that idea. There's a lot of people out there who were involved who are still interested in being involved. And they all had different experiences, but I think scale is one thing, and also not to pop your optimism balloon, but I think we also have to be planning for more person-to-person communication. If we have the kind of emergencies we may have, Zoom won't be an option, cell phones may not be an option. We need to have a way.
Well, that's another reason why it needs to be smaller groups.
Right, maybe the neighborhood has its own air horn or something, that somebody stands on their porch and fires off the air horn to let people know that something's going on.
And just to sort of bring it back to and report back on sort of what commission priority this aligns with, we're talking about that, essentially that local community-based emergency management plan. And that's not really the term we're using for it, but that is, I think, going to be one of the places for that conversation.
Well, and I also think what you were saying really speaks to the idea of prevention, of bolstering the community connections ahead of time. Not just for use in an emergency, but for just in general building of the structure.
That's what makes a strong community.
Don't limit it to emergency. I don't know how many people, I have children and grandchildren here. I don't know how many people are in that situation. Do you know how many people moved here during the pandemic and working remotely, and their kids go to school and they play soccer and they're never at these meetings because they don't have the time. They just don't have the time. I have people in our neighborhood, and I was able to pull them into what they could do. Sure. Right? Getting a front porch forum announcement is going to get them to this meeting. Sure. Getting a notification, they don't even know about notifications. Right? So Montpelier has changed, the population of Montpelier has changed a lot. And I don't know how many people realize how much it has changed. It's not all the time reflecting.
Well, it's definitely on the list. All right, other people, we have new arriver who maybe, we're going to do a little rotating.
I mean, I witnessed people, there was folks camping in Confluence Park, there was people camping under the Pavilion Hotel porch. Those people got washed out completely. And there's been no effort to restore. We have fewer downtown public bathrooms than we had before the flood. There's been no priority.
Is there something less than none?
Well, City Hall basement bathrooms used to be the 2 private bathrooms.
Not 24 hours.
They're correct, but they could have easily been 24
I know,
hours.
but they weren't.
I know, you heard me plenty on that. But my point is that a lot of this sounds bourgeois. We're gonna talk about putting engagement and planning. It's like we got some urgency here to solve some immediate problems that people have no place to wash up or sleep safely or be ready for the next flood. And the kind of community plan that's going to address all the things that the city's joke of a plan, I was shocked and repulsed by the flattery that guy gave to the city's emergency continuity of operations plan, because it's nothing but a joke. And
Well, I think that's another place where a strong neighborhood system.
You're gonna need
But
plans
also,
in
but also help.
each little neighborhood is gonna need its own plan that identifies who has what, who has ropes, who has lights and batteries and ham radio and et cetera. Because you're not gonna be able to do this on a citywide scale. And relying on volunteers inordinately is also not sustainable.
Oh, I don't agree. I think volunteerism has two functions. One is to get the job done, and the other is to actually engage people so that they feel they're a part of the solution, so they don't feel helpless, so that their fears are kind of put aside so that they can act. I remember, by the way, Steve,
I just want to be sure we're sort of having an inclusive conversation and go too deeply on. You two are welcome to continue that, but I just want to be sure other people
I
have an
just wanted to
opportunity
clarify
to chime in.
Clarify that the responsibility for compiling the detailed level plan that each community needs to be ready, that is probably too much to rely on a volunteer for.
Well, hopefully that's at least scaffolding that the commission is going to be able to start to create.
To build.
That then a local neighborhood can look at that and say, oh, okay, in our neighborhood, we're gonna have to do this a little differently because of X, Y, or Z. But there's something there to start with.
But what preparedness for this year are we, if we have another flood this year?
I mean, to be honest, there's a reason there's a consultant here tonight and we're getting to work on this one is because of that urgency. It's, the commission feels
Which consultant?
the ones around developing the emergency.
Are you spoken for Martin?
Well, Erica's not here tonight.
No, but her compatriot, Tori is here. But what I'm assuring you of is that there's urgency on that very subject. Because the sense is, we don't know when the next flood is coming.
Well, and it's not just the floods. I mean, the heat we had in the last couple of days is just a what we're going to see this summer.
Right.
And if anybody read the hurricane report, that's pretty scary.
25-day storms.
Well, just the fact that there will be more storms, they will be more intense, and the Northeast is where they're going to hit. So, I think we can't get here overly focused on the flood.
We've got to be prepared for whatever Mother Nature throws.
Yeah.
And the city plan has to have resiliency in there, not just flood. The city plan wording specifically says floods.
Okay.
And it absolutely has to. If
Be
we
more
just
broad.
focus on flooding.
Well, and anything that's constructed in terms of plans, like has to be flexible. It has to be, sort of plug and play for, oh, okay, this is our structure for flood response, but then if we have a heat emergency, this is the direction we have to go. These are the other people that have to be involved.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we need a lot of bags of ice, not bags of sand. So where do we get them?
And we have a homelessness emergency because the state throws people out of motels. And if we have a drug emergency, I mean, there are a lot of emergencies that we need to be able to face as a community.
Right. Resilience is not just about flooding. I think we heard you. Got it.
Whatever became of the neighborhood, I can't remember what it was called, but the like neighborhood.
This was exactly what,
Okay, yeah.
it essentially went away, but there's some real
It started out
encouragement.
as a community action network because it was the response to an anticipated emergency. And then it morphed into the capital area neighborhoods, which was more of a social, gathering types of things. And then it has, kind of language.
No, it didn't get that. It was canceled by the city manager.
Community action network. They usually kept the same acronym.
You have anything you want to add? We're just it's a free for all at this point, so, and it has been from the beginning,
It
so.
was actually very good.
Ruth, how about you? Any other topics that you're thinking about?
There was mention early on about the checklist, like response checklist, like what to do. Who's
The
kind of,
toolkits.
yeah, the toolkit.
I mean, I would say it's a commission priority, for sure. Central Vermont economic, are you thinking about it on the residential side or the business?
I'm like,
Residential
next time
side.
my basement floods, what do I do?
What do I do? Exactly.
We are the leaders here looking
it will become a component of the broader community sort of emergency response. I think we need to bring that down to the household level. And that checklist, as you described, really needs to integrate with what's happening at the city level, to some degree the state level, and to some degree even FEMA, right? Kind of need those layers. And so
There's just so much responsibility on it. Naturally, individuals are the first layer of responsibility kind of, and so
exactly.
yourself.
Right. That's right. Are we reconvening the full work in like 5? I don't yet. I'm doing it. We just have to do this all of us. But yes, I don't go to
the same skill levels.
Sure.
Same access.
And then
we may not have the internet.
I think you just stop.
So we have to have those other primitive forms of communication work in place. Airlines, unfortunately, can be a very effective way of doing it. Just to make sure that everybody knows that something's happening.
Right? Like it's gotta be a community driven, but organized. That's my feeling is that we really have to focus on what's the system here, or we have to get the community engaged. And then the neighborhood, network is a model that existed and we wanted to get back to that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, because that original purpose didn't actually work. We only got, it's fortunate that it kind of truncated what was happening. The first thing we were doing in the late summer that year was just surveying the neighborhoods, going around, literally knocking on doors.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what we did.
Yeah.
Ask people, what's your situation, what your needs, whatever your needs, blah, blah, blah. And even that was challenging, because a lot of people, won't answer the door, they don't want to talk to you.
And especially in a day and age when we got so accustomed to just communicating through that people now shy away from it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but I think
somebody shows up at my door, I'm all immediately.
It's like getting mail.
Yeah.
It's like getting postal mail. That's a big event. Whoa, I got a letter. Something sent me a letter. And it actually got here.
And I think that, and in the moment, my situation perhaps a little strange because stupidly I was coming home on the day it was London, got to Montpelier and couldn't get to our house and because we were totally cut off and it's like midnight.
Wow.
We're like, what are we gonna do? And I had one coworker who I had a feeling might still be up that late, and so we lived up on Hill in Berlin, so I called her and we crashed, and she was in it, and it was fine, but at in that moment, it just was like, I had no idea where to turn for any information or anything,
Yeah, well, and
that's
I think
a weird situation most people are.
I was involved with, in the flood response with the Mesa Fund and the animals.
I love
Civic Center, but one of the things that the animal disaster response focuses on in their outreach in between emergencies is go bags. Is they help people develop a go bag. In that case, they're helping the go bag, which everyone should have.
Just like
And for every member of the family, you have a go bag that you stock the certain things that you need, and you have a go bag or more than one go bag in your car.
Right.
But in that case, they were helping people remember to have a go bag for the past.
Exactly, yeah. I know, that was good. Yeah.
You want to get that? Thank you.
Sounds right.
Thank you, Ben. So we actually are going to bring our facilitators back up to give a very quick summary, and then we're going to close. And I guess I'll go first. So I was facilitating sort of the catch-all group, and I would say there was 3 themes that we heard in there, although I'm sure I'll miss some stuff. But one was just a deep concern about our businesses downtown and what we can be doing as a community to support them. They're facing sort of a multi-headed threat in terms of the flood and in terms of remote work, and they're just not seeing the foot traffic that they were a few years ago. So that was really loud and clear amongst the group. There was also some talk about the old capital area neighborhoods or community action network or whatever it was in its other iteration, some real talk about sort of bringing back some model of neighborhood organization. And then finally, some talk about really some personal stories about people still struggling with the impacts of the flood that is important for us to not lose sight of. Now I'm going to hand it off to Nathan. Yeah.
So I'm Nathan Suter. I was facilitating the group talking about surveying and assessing downtown buildings. I had a good and talkative crowd, and thank you for showing up for that. Themes that came out of that, I would say one of the strongest ones was essentially, what do we already know? Don't you have answers for this? And speaking for myself, I said, I do not. That's one of the things we're trying to seek. However, we are certainly not the first community in the world to flood, nor will we be the last. And there's been a ton of learning, and we wish to gain from that. There was also some discussion about if we do a good job of this idea of surveying buildings and giving those owners a checklist and a toolkit to act on, is that something that is transferable or translatable across our state and across our communities? And certainly we hope so. I also want to be careful not to be humble, because there may be other communities, even in Vermont, who are already ahead of us, right? We're probably not the first one to have this idea. And then probably missing something else. Oh, I think there was just bringing home the point that I ended up using a sort of medical analogy, right? Show me the patient, and we'll talk about the treatment. Every building is a different location. Every building is a different structure. Every building is a different use. Every building has a different exposure to risk. And so that's what we are trying to figure out, is get the expertise in there so that we can give a report to each building owner. And then when they have the ability to act, they can make decisions that are well-informed. I'm going to pass the ball to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Holler, and I was with Stephanie in the river improvement group. And I think the main message that we heard was, well, really people wanted to understand what the funding was for and what the projects might be about. I think that our community is really fortunate that this engineering analysis and process is already underway, and by fall, it's going to yield potential projects that really, if undertaken, could very likely be funded by FEMA in a big way, and then also reduce the amount of flooding that our community sees in the future. So that ball is really on its way, and that's exciting, but people wanted to understand what that was about. And then the biggest piece of feedback we got is that, okay, that's great. Let's do some projects. Let's try to reduce our future flooding. But what about the rest of the watershed? This really needs to be done in consideration of things that other communities are doing, protecting our forests, protecting floodplain and wetlands up and downstream. And that was really an overlap, I think, that probably with what was talked about in the regional conversations. But I'd say those were the 2 biggest things that come out of our group.
Can I take that segue? Am I jumping in line? I think it was a perfect segue for the regional conversation group. Starting with that, actually, I was really impressed and by the conversation that you as a group who joined us led about recognizing that it's about it's not just, it's easy to focus sort of on the riverbanks and the river corridor itself, because that's where the water is. but it's not always where the water comes from. It's not where the water starts and comes from. And so recognizing that we're talking about the forest, we're talking about the full flow in all aspects of the watershed and where those solutions can lie. We heard from Pat Moulton some really important information about FEMA monies coming down the pike for Vermont in general, and conversations starting in June that will start to affect where and how those funds are spent statewide to affect changes to slow the water down, to improve river management, watershed management. We heard a living embodiment of the need for these conversations, because in our group, there were numerous experts within who joined the group at different times, or references to other experts around the state doing different work. And it was a wonderful highlight to, there are so many intelligent, wonderful voices in the state doing so much important work. It's gonna be impossible for them all to connect with each of the other ones. And so there has to be groups, I hope, like our commission, who play that convening role and say, hey, talk to this person. Hey, talk to this person. Hey, you're doing that, and make sure you coordinate with this person. So that was it. We heard wonderful references to both the need for high-tech solutions and low-tech solutions, that there's room for both. And obviously associated nice breaks in cost potentially with the lower tech solutions that can play important roles in slowing water down. Finally, the sort of the contrast, the push and pull of the urgent and the long term. There was a wonderful call to say, hey, there's urgency here, and a recognition that regional conversation can't mean sort of long flowing, easygoing conversations that were over decades. We're trying to address urgent problems. And so those conversations have to happen now, identifying very real solutions that can start as soon as possible. But recognizing that many of the solutions we're talking about can't happen tomorrow. We are talking about large scale, watershed improvements, watershed changes that by necessity, by physicality, by cost, by everything else, many of them are going to take time. Some quicker, some much longer. And recognizing as a community that we need to act with urgency, and we also have maybe to have a little bit more patience to wait for solutions that might take longer than we would want them to.
I think Jamie stole my segue because we had lots of the same conversations, right? How do we integrate all of this work as a whole? We were talking about the River's Edge Master Plan, which is really thinking about within the city limits, what are the ways that we can bring together the work that has been done, the work of the city, the work of the state, the work of other partners along the way to understand what is there presently, what work has been done, how do we bring those things together, how do we take the science and the data that we're going to gain from other more technical studies and bring them together to think about what's possible within our community moving forward. What I took away from this conversation is an eagerness from the 15 or 20 folks who sat there, many of them for the whole conversation, who were ready to sign up and ready to be part of that group that moves that work forward. And that's what I love about this community, and that's what I'm really excited about. So thank you very much for participating.
And we were part of the emergency, the action plan group over there. And I completely forgotten I was supposed to talk, so I don't really remember what we talked about. The highlights that I do remember, though, really revolved around engaging in regional conversations as part of it. The question was asked, are there other communities that are doing this? How well are they doing it? Are they doing it better or worse than we have? What can we learn from them? So that's some feedback that we took. There was a big focus on people wanting tools to help them prepare for the next time while the skies are blue before the things happen. And that involves that goes to the individual residents and how do you prepare your home for the next time? How do businesses prepare for next time? How do we as a community prepare for the next time? And yeah, that was that. So thank you very much for coming.
Communication.
And
communication.
That's right. Communication was another big part of it, that some folks felt there was no information and some other folks knew that there was plenty of information. It was just not in all the places that everybody looks, right? So everybody receives information in different ways, and we need to be very cognizant of that in letting people know what's happening and how they can contribute. Thanks.
We're going to close with, well, I'll just say our commission members are multi-talented, and you're about to get to experience that multi-talented nature of the team. As they prepare, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. This is not, while the commission has a set of priorities, the truth is this is a community endeavor. It's really gonna, it takes a team to do this work. And the format of this conversation is emblematic of how we see this work happening, which is there's tremendous expertise in this community and there's tremendous wherewithal. And that's part of what makes us strong, and that we're going to have to draw on that as we do this work. I'll mention our webpage, montpelierstrong.org. I'm about to have an email address that's just going to be jon@montpelierstrong.org. That should be live in the next couple of days. We really want you to be in touch with us. You saw we were taking careful notes. We will come back together as a commission, really be thinking together about what we heard tonight, and then we're rolling up our sleeves and getting to work with action as we move this work forward. And now I'm gonna be quiet because we've got Mark and Kate.
And all of you, for those of you, you ready?
Yeah.
For those of you whose worst possible nightmare is holding hands and singing Kumbaya in a circle, please circle up and hold hands. Because it's about to happen. You ready? All right.
It's with the lights going off so they can be.
Sure. The less they can see of us, the better.
Is that Katie? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
I can change the world with my own two hands and make it a better place. With my own two hands, make it a kinder place. With my own two hands, with my own two hands. Well, I can make peace on earth with my own two hands, and I can clean up the earth with my own two hands, and I can reach out to you with my own two hands, with my own two hands, with my own two hands. Come on, I'm gonna make it a brighter place. Oh, with my own two hands, gonna make it a safer place. With my own two hands, gonna help the human race. With my own two hands, with my own two hands. With my own two hands. I can hold on to you with my own two hands, and I can comfort you with my own two hands. But you got to use your own two hands. Use your own two hands. We've got to use our own two hands. Eat with our own two hands. With our own two hands. With our own two hands. Say something. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll see you in the next forum. Good job.
Thank you, guys. That's a great way to end it. Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Oh.